The day I came home from surgery, I found another woman in my kitchen. She stood barefoot at my marble island wearing my robe, stirring sugar into coffee in the mug my daughter had given me for Mother's Day. When she looked up and saw me in the doorway, pale, shaking, one hand pressed to the fresh stitches beneath my sweater, she smiled. Not nervously, not apologetically, confidently, like she belonged there. Daniel rested one hand casually against the small of her back. "This is Vanessa," he said, as if introducing me to a guest at brunch. I stared. "What is this?" He sighed, actually sighed. "Vanessa is staying here for a while." Rebecca nearly lunged at him. I stopped her because something inside me had gone utterly still, the kind of stillness that comes before an avalanche. "You're joking." "No." He didn't even hesitate. "We've been together for 8 months. 8 months. While I sat terrified in doctors' offices, while I cried in parking lots after appointments, while I thought my husband was holding my hand because he loved me. Then he said the sentence I will remember until the day I die. "You haven't exactly been much of a wife lately." Rebecca screamed at him. Vanessa stared into her coffee like this was awkward but unavoidable. "And Daniel told me I could stay in the guest room until I was well enough to relocate." Relocate. Like I was a tenant. Like 15 years of marriage meant nothing. Emma was away at college. Daniel begged me not to tell her yet. "Don't poison her against me." That night Vanessa slept in my bed, our bed. I heard them laughing through the wall while I lay awake in the guest room, unable to even turn over without pain. That was the last night I cried over Daniel Whitmore, because grief gave way to clarity. Daniel thought humiliation would break me. He forgot something important. For 15 years, I handled every financial detail in our household. Taxes, accounts, trust paperwork, insurance, investment management. He trusted me with everything because he never imagined I would look too closely. So while I recovered quietly in the guest room, I began looking. At first, I expected hidden money, a secret divorce fund, proof he had been planning to leave. Instead, I found something worse. Transfers, small at first, then larger. Payments from our joint accounts into shell LLCs. Credit lines opened against marital assets. Private accounts Daniel had been feeding for over a year. At first, I thought he was hiding money from me. Then I realized he was draining us, preparing to leave me bankrupt. But the deeper I dug, the uglier it became. Daniel wasn't just stealing from me, he was stealing from clients. Settlement funds rerouted through fake entities. Expense reimbursements falsified. Offshore transfers hidden behind shell corporations. Forged signatures, misappropriated trust distributions. My husband wasn't planning a divorce. He was planning an escape. And he intended to leave me holding the wreckage. For 2 weeks, I copied everything, every account, every ledger, every transfer, every login, every email, every falsified report. I smiled while Vanessa asked if I planned to start apartment hunting. I thanked Daniel when he pretended to care whether I needed pain medication. I let them think I was broken. Then Daniel made his fatal mistake. He announced he was hosting his annual charity gala at our house. 200 guests, judges, law partners, political donors, clients, board members. The entire social circle he had spent 20 years cultivating. He planned to debut Vanessa publicly, as if I had already vanished. He told me it would be best for everyone if I stayed upstairs, to avoid embarrassing yourself. I smiled and said, "Of course." Then I called the most ruthless divorce attorney in Connecticut, a woman named Miranda Kessler. I delivered the evidence. She read for nearly 10 minutes in silence, then looked up and said, "Mrs. Whitmore, your husband is either incredibly arrogant or incredibly stupid. Both." I replied. The day of the gala arrived. Our home glowed with chandeliers and candlelight. Luxury cars lined the driveway. Guests floated through rooms I had decorated. Women in couture laughed beneath ceilings I had chosen. Men shook Daniel's hand and praised his success. Vanessa wore red. Of course she wore red. At 8:43, Daniel tapped his champagne glass. The room quieted. He wrapped an arm around Vanessa's waist and smiled. As many of you know, life brings change. Tonight marks the beginning of an exciting new chapter. That was my cue. I stepped onto the staircase. Wearing the black dress Daniel once told me made me unforgettable. Every head turned. Daniel's face drained of color. Vanessa's smile faltered. I descended slowly, took the microphone from his hand, and said, "Before this celebration continues, I believe everyone here deserves to know exactly who Daniel Whitmore is." Silence. Daniel reached for the microphone. I stepped away, then held up a stack of documents. "For the past several weeks, I have been uncovering where every stolen dollar went." Gasps, whispers, shock. Daniel went white. I began reading transfer dates, account numbers, fraudulent entities, theft totals, client names, offshore accounts. Judges stared, partners exchanged horrified looks. Vanessa turned toward Daniel, frozen. Then the front door opened. Federal agents entered, right on time. Daniel stared at me. No, I said softly. "You did this to yourself." They arrested him in front of everyone he had spent 20 years trying to impress. Vanessa fled before the handcuffs clicked. Behind her stood my husband, Daniel Whitmore, adjusting his cufflinks as if this were a scheduling inconvenience rather than the destruction of my life. "Claire," he said with a sigh, "don't make this harder than it needs to be." That was the moment my marriage died. But to understand why what happened next mattered, you need to understand who I was before Daniel Whitmore decided I had become disposable. My name is Claire Whitmore. I was 39 years old when my husband replaced me before I was even healed. But the story didn't end there, because investigators discovered something worse. Daniel had forged my signatures, added my name to financial authorizations, moved stolen money through entities tied to me. He had planned to frame me. If I hadn't uncovered it first, I could have gone to prison beside him. That realization hurt more than the affair, because betrayal is one thing, attempted destruction is another. Emma came home the next morning. I told her everything, showed her every page. She read the evidence in silence, then said, "He's dead to me." She never spoke to him again. The fallout was immediate. His law firm terminated him, his accounts froze, his law license was suspended, then revoked, clients sued, partners disavowed him, friends vanished. Vanessa disappeared within 48 hours. Apparently true love has limits when federal indictments appear. Daniel took a plea deal, 42 months in federal prison. The divorce destroyed him, because in his greed he had commingled fraudulent and marital assets so recklessly every legal shield collapsed. I kept nearly everything. The house, the accounts, the settlements, the investments. I sold the mansion the following spring, bought a smaller waterfront home 3 towns over, returned to consulting full-time, then eventually specialized in helping women uncover financial abuse during divorce proceedings. There is strange comfort in helping others avoid what nearly destroyed you. Last month, Daniel sent me a letter from prison, 3 handwritten pages, begging forgiveness, blaming stress, blaming Vanessa, blaming childhood trauma, blaming everyone but himself. I burned it in my fireplace without finishing the second paragraph, because some betrayals do not deserve closure. They deserve consequences. Daniel thought my breaking point would destroy me. He was wrong. It introduced him to the woman I became after I stopped loving him. And if you enjoy stories of betrayal, revenge, and women who rise stronger than the people who tried to break them, subscribe to her breaking point. Because karma may be patient, but she always arrives. Most people described me the same way: reliable, composed, organized. I was the woman who remembered birthdays without Facebook reminders, the woman who color-coded family calendars, the woman who packed backup medicine in every purse, the woman who somehow always knew when someone said "I'm fine" but meant the opposite. Before marriage, before motherhood, before Daniel slowly convinced me my entire life should orbit around his, I had been ambitious. I worked in financial operations for a private investment firm in Manhattan. I loved numbers because numbers never lied. People did. I met Daniel when I was 23. It was at a charity fundraiser hosted by one of our clients. He was 26, fresh out of law school, already hired by one of the most prestigious firms in New York. He was handsome in that polished, expensive way some men seem born to be. Perfect teeth, perfect posture, perfect smile. And when he looked at you, he made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He remembered details after one conversation. My favorite wine. That I hated tulips but loved peonies. That my middle name was Anne after my grandmother. He sent flowers to my office 3 days later. Peonies, white. He made me feel chosen. And when you're young, being chosen can feel so much like love that you don't realize the difference until years later. We married 2 years after we met. At first, life with Daniel felt like a movie. Weekend trips to Nantucket. Private dinners at rooftop restaurants, cocktail parties with people who wore linen and inherited trust funds, a beautiful home in Connecticut with hydrangeas lining the walkway and windows so large the morning sun poured through every room. People envied us. Women told me I was lucky. Men admired Daniel. We looked perfect. That was Daniel's favorite thing about us, looking perfect. The cracks started small, always small. That's how men like Daniel operate. Never enough to make you run, just enough to make you question yourself. You'd be prettier if you wore your hair down. You're overreacting. You get emotional when you're tired. I'm only saying this because I want the best for you. He never yelled, never hit, never crossed a line obvious enough to call abuse. He simply made me smaller by inches, and shrinking happened so slowly I barely noticed. Then Emma was born. Our daughter changed everything. I shifted from full-time finance into consulting so I could work from home more often. Daniel loved telling people he provided so well that his wife barely had to work. What he meant was, he liked being the center of gravity in our house. He liked that my career bent around his. Still, for years I believed we were happy or at least stable until I got sick. It started with abdominal pain. Sharp, sudden, then blood work, scans, specialists, then surgery. The diagnosis wasn't fatal, but it was serious enough that recovery would take weeks. I was terrified. Daniel was irritated. That should have been my warning. He complained about hospital parking, about canceled golf weekends, about how exhausted he was from handling everything. He acted burdened by my illness. By the time I went into surgery, my husband treated my suffering like a scheduling conflict. Still, I never imagined what waited for me at home. My sister Rebecca drove me back from the hospital. I could barely walk. Every step felt like fire pulling through my abdomen. She helped me through the front door. Then we saw her, tall, blonde, beautiful in the aggressively polished way women in skincare commercials are beautiful. She stood at my kitchen counter wearing my robe.